Welcome back. All right, so I want to talk about goaltenders today. Obviously, it's in the news with Swayman and the fact he's a restricted free agent. He's still not able to come to an agreement with the Bruins. And then there's the fact that Shesterkin is trying to get an extension for next season and beyond. If the Rangers are watching what's going on in Boston, good indication that maybe you want to get that done before the season starts. The asking price for Shesterkin could very well just go up. But what's interesting is that the argument is, okay, you can't pay that much for goaltending. And that's an argument that's been out there for a long time. Clearly, Jeremy Swayman and Igor Shesterkin are two young goaltenders, young by NHL standards when it comes to goalies, right? Who are trying to reset the market. And this is a comment that's been out there, resetting the market. So the number one goaltender in terms of cap hit is Carey Price. His playing career is done. But his cap hit's $10.5 million, and it's year 7 of 8. So we are into year 7 of this contract, and nobody has gone past it. So while skaters, forwards and defensemen, their prices keep going up, goalies haven't. And it is interesting because we as fans are conditioned to say X player is clearly being greedy because the team's offering that much. Well, I would play for that. And I sometimes feel like with goaltenders, we seem to be conditioned to say, well, they're worth a lot less. And I've talked in videos about how unpredictable goaltenders can be, which is absolutely true. And I know that that's something that a general manager might look at as well. So number 2 cap hit is obviously Bobrovsky's. He's in year 6 of a 7-year contract. At the end of this contract, he'll be, I believe, 36. Probably not going to get $10 million on the next contract. We know Price isn't playing again. So number 3 on the list is Andrei Vasilevskiy. He has a cap hit of $9.5 million. He's in year 5 out of 8 with his contract. Bobrovsky just won a Stanley Cup. Vasilevskiy has a couple Stanley Cups as well. So you're the Boston Bruins. You're negotiating with Swayman. You look at those guys and go, well, you can't argue you're better than Vasilevskiy or better than Bobrovsky. But again, there's a bigger picture here. So I wanted to get the big picture here. Bobrovsky and Price are 2 players who have a cap hit of $10 million or higher. There are 17 players in the National Hockey League that have a cap hit of $10 million or higher. And there's been the argument about you can't pay too much for one player or else you're going to hurt yourself when it comes to the salary cap, which is not incorrect. But we're now in an era where the salary cap is going to keep going up. So the values that these players have agreed to for their contracts, great, but the salary cap is going up. I will talk about some of the extensions, though, and how the Bruins may very well be using those against Swayman as well. There are 41 players in the National Hockey League with a cap hit of $8.8 million or higher. So that's 41 players in the league with a cap hit of $8.8 million or higher. Let's come back to the goalies. Price, $10.5 million, right? Bobrovsky, $10 million. Number 3 being Vasilevskiy at $9.5 million. Number 4 is Connor Hellebuyck at $8.5 million, meaning there's 41 players who make more money than Connor Hellebuyck. Minimum. Because that's $8.8 million. That's not counting 8.6 or 8.7. So, Hellebuyck, the number 4 ranked goaltender, argued this too. Well, you can't give him more money than Hellebuyck, right? It's like the goalies have a different market than the forwards and the defensemen. And this is, again, what we as fans look at and go, yeah, nah, that's about right. And so when defensemen and forwards get $6 million a year, we don't really blink at it. But when it's a goaltender, it feels like there's more scrutiny on it and more of a, is that a wise move when it comes to your salary cap? So number 5 is Sorokin, $8.25 million, and it's the first of 8 years for Sorokin. So you're the Bruins, you're going to Swayman, you're saying, you know what? You've only been a starter or starter-ish for a year and a half, maybe. So looking at Sorokin's number, you can't get more than that. So with Neely coming out today with he has 64 million reasons to, I'd have 64 million reasons to play if I was him, kind of thinking. It gives you this idea of, well, clearly that's way too much money if he wants that because of Sorokin's deal being 8.25 million, because the goalies have a completely different setup than the rest of the roster does. So number 6 on the list is Gibson at $6.4 million. The cap hit of John Gibson's, and this is year 6 of his contract out of 8 seasons, and he is 6th highest paid for the goaltenders at a $6.4 million cap hit. So I totally get it. Then there's a tie for 7th. Binnington makes $6 million. He's in year 4 out of 6. And Markstrom is making $6 million, and he's in year 5 out of 6. So we've seen as forwards and defensemen have had their value go up and up and up. Goaltenders, not so much. And so if you're a general manager, and we'll go through this too, because there's some interesting stuff with the other teams too. But there are 73 players in the NHL with a cap hit of $8 million or higher. There are 73 players who make $8 million or higher, and Binnington's $6 million cap hit, I'll see people saying he's not really worth $6 million. I've seen that. I would argue Binnington's worth $6 million. I would argue that when you've got 73 players that make 8 or have a cap hit of $8 million or more, Binnington's underpaid at 6. And I know people talk about his consistency and whatnot, but Binnington had excellent numbers for St. Louis this past season. $6 million seems low. Markstrom, some of the best advanced stats too. So number 9 at $5.9 million a year is Grubauer. He's in year 4 out of 6. And then 10th on the list is Shesterkin, $5.67 million. Of course, he's in the 4th year of a 4-year contract. He's still the number 10 paid goaltender. Shesterkin wants to be the number 1 paid goaltender. And again, we look at Carey Price. So when Shesterkin talks about, I want to make $12 million a year, what do people mention? Well, that'll put him ahead of Carey Price, because goalies have a different market than forwards and skaters. So rather than looking and going, well, Shesterkin would make less money than Matthews, less money than McDavid, than McKinnon. He's an excellent goaltender. Yeah, he belongs in that upper echelon with cap hits. We compare him to the other goaltenders. So it works really well for GMs. It's helped them, especially in the flat cap era, to keep everything under control. But again, the salary cap is going up. It's supposed to hit $92 million next year. That might be conservative. Maybe it's more than that. It could be $100 million for a salary cap for the National Hockey League 2 years down the road. So people look at Swayman saying, I'd like to have, let's just say it's $8.5 million a year. Let's just say it's $8.5 million a year, and say, well, that's way too much. And they won't look at the projections of where the cap's going to go, how long ago some of these contracts were signed, and the fact that goalie money hasn't really changed that much. And looking at contracts, and we'll get into the extensions. Saros takes an extension which pays him more money, but I would say $7.4 million. I think it's $7.4 million. He has number 74, right? I think that's low. The reason being, there are 110 players in the NHL this season, 2024-2025, who have a cap hit of $7 million or more. 110 players. So Saros at $7.44 million, is he still going to be in the top 100? No, because the salary cap's going to keep going up. So even with a $7.44 million cap hit, Nashville could look at that, say 2-3 years down the road, and their number 1 goaltender isn't even in the top 100 highest paid National Hockey League players. It's crazy. And yet this is what we've kind of learned is, hey, you know, goaltenders are only worth this. So Hellebuck's $8.5 million is number 4. So Kakinen's there at $1 million. He's just got a 1-year contract. Comrie, $825,000 is his cap hit. He's got 2 years. It's the first year of that contract. Washington, not even $2 million being spent on their goaltenders this year, but both Lindgren and Thompson are in the final year of their contracts. For Vegas, you've got Leonard, but Leonard's not going to play. That's why I put him in a different color, because it's a $5 million cap hit, but that's going on LTIR. He's in the final year of his 5-year contract. Aiden Hill, $4.9 million. He's in the second year of a 2-year deal. And Samsonov, he's got a 1-year deal at $1.8 million. So Vegas, who is seen as a team that's trying to get back into contention, their cap hit for their goalies comes in at $6.7 million. That's not even 10% of the cap. Which, I understand that's only 2 players on a 23-man roster and all this fun stuff. But again, goaltending's really, really important. And teams don't pay goaltenders like it is. And you will see that, well, it's really unpredictable, and, well, how much should a goalie get paid? All that argument. Vancouver, of course, Demko in the 4th year of a deal is paying him $5 million a year. Lankinen, $875,000, a 1-year deal for him. That's a ridiculously low cost for Lankinen, considering the solid goaltending he's provided to both Chicago and Nashville over the last few years. Shilov's $850,000 cap hit. He's in the first of 2 years. Of course, Limited number of games he's played at the NHL level, but that's a bargain. Utah, between Vejmelka and Ingram, they're paying what, $4.67 million in cap approximately. Vejmelka's in the final year of a deal that pays him $2.72 million. Ingram, $1.95 million. Year 2 out of 3. This is where it can come back over to the 110 players that have a cap hit of $7 million or higher, and goaltenders are paid like fourth liners. Paid like third and fourth liners. So Stolarz, $2.5 million. First year, 2-year contract for him. All Stolarz has been is an excellent backup goaltender. Wool, $767,000 cap hit. This is the 3rd year of that. He has an extension beyond this season, which I've talked about how it's risky. But again, he's not being paid like a top 4 defenseman. He's not being paid like a top 6 forward. He's just being paid like a goaltender, right? Tampa Bay, you got Vasilevsky, and then Johansson is in the 2nd year of his contract, $775,000 cap hit, league minimum for your backup goaltender. Which, again, when you think about it, your backup goaltender is going to be in net for what? At least 20 games of the season? So a guy who's going to be in net and could very well hold your season in the palm of his hand for how well or how poorly he plays in those 20 games is worth league minimum. That's it. St. Louis, you got Bennington, I've talked about. Hofer, league minimum for him. He's in the 2nd year of a 2-year deal. And going back to Johansson, he's not going to get more than that next year. He might get a little bit more, but he's not going to be a $1.5 million goaltender. He's going to stay at around the $1 million mark, is my guess, unless he has a great year for Tampa, in which case maybe he gets $1.5 million. Grubauer and Decord combined $7.1 million. Decord's in the 2nd year of a contract that pays him $1.2 million. Same as I said with Johansson right here. Hofer, Decord. These guys, as backup goaltenders, are going to be in net for you for probably about a quarter of your games, and they get paid very, very little. Very little. San Jose, Vanacek and Blackwood are both in the final years of their deals, and people will talk about how Vanacek's overpaid at $3.4 million. Doesn't Vlasic get a $7 million cap hit this year, though? Isn't Vlasic still at $7 million? So, again, it's kind of weird to me. It's odd. Askarov, of course, in a final year of a deal. He's got an extension signed past this season with San Jose. $925,000 for Askarov this year. That's your cap hit. Pittsburgh. Jari and Nedeljkovic combined make, what is that, $7.88 million approximately. Jari's in the 2nd year of 5 years, makes $5.38 million. Nedeljkovic, $2.5 million, first year of 2. And Jari is one that when he signed that contract extension of $5.38 million, I saw I don't know if he's worth that much. But again, if he was a top 4 defenseman making $6 million, people don't necessarily bat an eye unless he's having a bad year. But in general, that's the going rate. But for your starting goaltender, he's just going to play 50-55 games. I mean, I don't know. But then you've got Philadelphia. Fedotov, some risk with a $3.27 million cap hit. First year out of 2. But $3.2 million when the salary cap is as high as it is, it's not really that much. And Ersson at $1.45 million. He's in the first of 2 years as well. Cheap goaltending. Cheap goaltending the way of things for Philadelphia, who are not expected to be in the playoffs necessarily this year anyways. Ottawa, of course, Ullmark's in the final year of a contract that pays him $5 million a year. Ullmark is perfectly within his right to say, you know what, I deserve to be in that $8 to $9 million a year range when the negotiations get rolling. Forsberg, $2.75 million for him. He's in the 3rd of 3 years. So even Ottawa, who's upgraded their goaltender, their 2 goaltenders make $7.75 million. So they make less combined than, say, like JT Miller in Vancouver. Now, again, Ullmark, it's the 4th year of a 4-year contract, so the market's changed. But when Price, in year 7, has a $10.5 million cap hit, and it's still number 1 amongst goaltenders, again, it tells you the market hasn't really adapted like it has in other parts of the game. I talked about Shesterkin. We talked about Jonathan Quick. What a deal. $1.27 million cap hit. He's just got the 1-year contract. That's a huge bargain for the New York Rangers. The New York Islanders, bit pricey with their goaltenders, kind of, sort of, in that Sorokin's number 5, of course, with the cap hit of $8.25 million, but Varlamov at $2.75 million, and it's year 2 out of 4. And Varlamov at times has just, exchanged the net with Sorokin, where it's 1 on, 1 off for these guys. And it's worth less than $3 million a year. So, and then go look at Pierre Engvall and what he makes and compare it with Varlamov, there's a different market with goalies. It's completely different. New Jersey, Jake Allen at $3.85 million. Do people think he's overpaid? Yeah. But then you compare it to how many defensemen and forwards are making $4 million or higher. Yeah. Again, Markstrom, top 10, and a contract that kicked in years ago. He's in year 5 out of 6. I've talked about Saros. They've got Wedgwood there as the backup, $1.5 million, year 1 out of 2. Montreal, Carey Price we've talked about. Montembeault, $3.15 million deal. First year out of 3. Primo's in the final year of his contract that pays him $890,000, year 3 out of 3. Like, we've talked a lot about how there's not as many goaltenders coming from Canada. I don't know, if I was a kid right now watching hockey, I'd be like, if I want to make money, I should be a defenseman or a forward, right? The goalies don't get as much, plus there's less goaltenders than there are defensemen and forwards. Gustafsson, $3.75 million. There's been discussions of that contract being too high. He's in year 2 out of 3. Marc-Andre Fleury, 1-year deal, $2.5 million. It should be his final year. But again, their goaltending is, $6.25 million put together between the two of them? That's not bad. L.A., Riddick, 1 year, $1 million. And Kemper, $5.25 million deal. It's year 3 out of 5. And Washington being able to trade Kemper's cap hit looked like a huge win for Washington. And I'm not saying it wasn't. But again, Darcy Kemper at $5.25 million is seen as overpaid. There's 110 players who make $7 million or more when it comes to the cap hit. Florida, Spencer Knight, very likely to get the backup, in part because of his contract, $4.5 million. He's in year 2 out of 3 there. Of course, Drieger's there too, but Drieger's not making anything like that. But Knight, because of that cap hit, should be the guy. In Edmonton, Stuart Skinner is one of the biggest bargains in the NHL. And whether we want to have the argument about whether or not he's a top 10 goalie in the NHL, fine. But at $2.6 million, he's in year 2 out of 3. Compare that to some of the contracts that have been signed. $2.6 million is very little in terms of pay that you're going to give a guy who's going to be in net for 55 games? Pickard, $1 million contract, or $1 million a year. This is the first year out of 2. And Pickard had a really good year last year and still makes just the $1 million, which is different than forwards and defensemen too. How many times have we seen a forward have one good year and they cash in? Goaltender has one good year, and we're kind of conditioned to go, well, that was as a backup. Or, yeah, I mean, he was okay, but has he really proven himself? So, in putting this together and just looking at the numbers, I realized, like, I've kind of been bamboozled with this too. So, I'm not saying I'm off the hook here. I'm looking at these numbers for goalies and thinking, you know what, compared to what other players make at forward and defense, and I know the argument would be, well, there's more forwards and more defensemen, and they play all 82 games, but if you don't have a good goaltender, your team's probably not going to succeed. Goaltending is so important in the NHL. Playoff time, it's a key thing. So I think it's worthy of discussion. Husso, $4.75 million cap hit. He's in the final year of his deal. Lyons in the final year of his deal. His cap hit's $900,000. Talbot, $2.5 million cap hit. He's in year 1 out of a 2-year deal. And again, Talbot makes $2.5 million. So about the equivalent of a depth defenseman, third line forward, and may very well get the lion's share of games for Detroit this year. In Dallas, Ottinger, $4 million cap hit. He's in the final year of his deal. Ottinger's got to be watching the Swayman situation really, really closely because that's his future, right? DeSmith, $1 million, first year out of 3, cap hit of $1 million for DeSmith after being pretty good for the Canucks as a backup. Absolute bargain. And again, with Ottinger, if Dallas is smart, they'll get that extension done earlier, not wait like Boston did. Columbus, Merzlikins. How many times have we talked about nobody wants Merzlikins' cap hit of $5.4 million? And I understand why. I understand that all these teams are capped out, and I'm sure that's the argument used with goaltenders of, hey, we can't pay you that amount of money because, you know, we've got to ice a full team. We as fans have said it as well, but it's just kind of weird because, again, for a starting goaltender, $5.4 million. I'm not saying Elvis is great right now or he's had a great few seasons, because he hasn't. But it just shows how tough the market is when you can move an Erik Karlsson contract. You can move contracts for various forwards and defensemen, but when it's a goalie, I feel like it's a little more difficult to move it. Tarasov, $1.05 million cap hit. He's in the final year of his contract. Probably going to play. I think he's probably going to end up being the starter for Columbus by the end of the season. And then we see Elvis get moved next summer. Because as the cap keeps going up, it should be easier to move his contract. For Colorado, Georgiev, $3.4 million cap hit. He's in the final year of his deal. I don't have anything to add other than I know he didn't have a great season, but at $3.4 million, that's your starter, and he wins you, was it 39 games this past season? Can you complain? I don't think you can. And Annunen with an $837,500 cap hit. He's in the first out of 2 years. Again, he had a pretty strong run towards the end of the season, and it doesn't get him much of a bump in terms of his pay whatsoever. Chicago, Mrazek, $4.25 million cap hit. He's in the first year of a 2-year deal extension with Chicago. And Brossoit, $3.3 million cap hit, the first of 2 years there. So combined, Chicago spending $7.55 million on their goaltending, which would be seen as high by some, I would think. But Brossoit's been good. Mrazek's had a good couple of seasons with Chicago. So I'm going to go ahead and say that's not bad. In Carolina, Anderson, $3.4 million cap hit. He's in the last year of his contract. It's just a 2-year deal. Kochetkov, $2 million cap hit. He's in year 2 out of 4 this season. And so we can talk about Carolina and how, are they still a contender or are they not? The cap hit for their 2 goaltenders is a little over $5 million. So in a league where your cap hit's, approaching $90 million, goaltending's worth 5. It's worth 5. Because this is how the market works. Calgary, goaltending's cheap there too. Vladar, $2.2 million. He's in the second year of a 2-year deal. And Wolf, $850,000 deal. He's in the first of a 2-year deal. And of course, Wolf doesn't have much at the NHL level as of yet. A lot of potential though. And I think his cap's can be a lot higher when that next contract rolls around. Buffalo has 3 goaltenders. Luukkonen, $4.75 million contract in terms of cap hit. He's in the first of a 5-year deal. So already I'm going to say that one should be a bargain if Luukkonen can play anywhere near as well this year as he did last year. Levi, $925,000 cap hit. He's in year 3 of a 3-year deal. So he's going to get probably a raise next year, but it's going to depend on how many games he gets into for Buffalo. And Reimer, a 1-year deal at $1 million. So Reimer, who may very well end up being the backup. Maybe Levi's playing down in Rochester again. And so for a goaltender that, again, you're counting on him for 20 to 30 games, it's worth $1 million. It's worth a little over league minimum. Boston, mentioned Swayman. Korpisalo, of course, $4 million contract. 2 years. He's in year 2 out of 5 with that $4 million cap hit. And a lot of talk about how that's way too high for Korpisalo, which, again, 110 players at a cap hit of $7 million or more. Not saying he's one of the top 110 players, but it does feel like there are some pretty darn good goaltenders right now that don't make that top money. And then in Anaheim, I've mentioned Gibson. I'll mention Dostal. $812,500 cap hit. He's in the second year of a 2-year deal. So this next summer, Dostal's going to get a raise of some sort, and I would think that's probably where Gibson ends up getting moved. But it's interesting because if you view goaltenders, if you view Vasilevsky as being just as important to Tampa Bay as Austin Matthews is to Toronto, if Stuart Skinner is just as valuable to Edmonton as, say, Darnell Nurse is to Edmonton, right? Or Ekholm is to Edmonton. Or, I don't know, if Draisaitl's that important, how important is the starting goaltender? And it just feels like general managers haven't been paying goalies for a long time. And now we've got Swayman and Igor Shesterkin wanting to reset the market. That's a term I've been hearing a lot of lately. They want to reset the market, meaning they feel goaltenders are underpaid. And looking at this board, they're not wrong. I do think goaltenders are underpaid. As salaries for players who are skaters keep going up, the $10 million contracts for goalies, Bobrovsky is in year 6 of that contract. Price is in year 7 of that contract. Vasilevsky's the next one that's even close to $10 million at $9.5 million. and he's in year 5 of his contract. So the question I have is this, because this is not easy. And there's no easy way to go, oh, all right, so all these goalies should get, X amount of dollars. But if goalies are underpaid, how do goalies deal with that? And if you're a general manager, how much is a goaltender worth? How much is that goaltending worth? Because again, if you look at the Stanley Cup and you look at the goaltenders who win a lot of Stanley Cups, they tend to be really good goaltenders and usually relatively good from one year to another. As unpredictable as goaltenders can be, they tend to be pretty good ones. So my question is that to you is, how much should teams be spending on goaltending compared to what they are? And do you feel like there's any chance that Swayman and Igor are going to reset the market and things are going to change? Or do you think general managers are just going to play the waiting game and play some hardball, and we're not going to see that breakthrough? Because it feels weird to talk about goaltenders and top paid guys 10.5, 10 million when you've got hockey players that are going to make 14, 15 million who are forwards, and goaltenders anything above 10 million. And boy, are you greedy. What a greedy goaltender you are, and how dare you. The other thing with Swayman too is he's also trying to get paid in a way that I don't feel like goaltenders do. And that is that in today's NHL, they pay for potential unless you're a goaltender. Goaltenders aren't being paid based on what they're going to do. And defensemen and goaltenders definitely, or defensemen and forwards definitely are, while goaltenders aren't, which I find weird. I find the whole thing bizarre. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe. I will definitely keep this in mind the next time that a goaltender is in negotiations for an extension, and that part of my brain wants to go, well, he's not worth more than $6 million a year. And I'm gonna have to remember how many players make more than $7 million a year in cap hit, and it ends up being a lot. Yes, if you look at by percentages, well, by percentages, this many goaltenders compared to this many forwards or defensemen. But goaltending is so vitally important. So vitally important in the National Hockey League. So, let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.